Hello, and welcome to The Confident Commit, the podcast for anyone who wants to join the conversation on how to deliver software better and faster.
If you're looking to build a trusted ship, tune in, let's confidently commit.
I'm your host, Rob Zuber, CTO of CircleCI, the software delivery engine for teams that want to ship at AI speed confidently. Super excited today to have Greg Foster, co-founder, CTO of Graphite, because that's kind of what you do, right? Like right in the middle of all of this, attempting to deliver faster, thinking about just moving quickly, all the pieces of the delivery chain that aren't that. But we're going to spend all this time talking about that. So first of all, welcome, Greg, and thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Rob. This is so exciting. This is my number one passion that I obsess about and love to talk about. Also, cool. I've known CircleCI for ages, so I'm thrilled and charmed to be on here.
Yeah, awesome, and great to meet you. Super excited to have you. And we were talking just before we started. It wasn't in the original plan, but I do want to talk about this because in the Bay Area, and so you live in New York. I live in the Bay Area, and we were just talking about billboards, and I've noticed the graphite billboards because they make me laugh. In the Bay Area, the one that first caught my eye, and I will admit, I tried to get my son to take a photograph of it so I could share with some other people, but it's one of these like digital billboards. So if you're not fast enough, it's changed, then you won't see it again on that drive sort of thing. So it was a little tricky. We missed it, but it's like a Git diff for people who don't live here and haven't seen it, but it's sort of a Git diff, where the red is 996 and the green, the replacement, is 955. And so for people who don't understand that, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week to kind of normal working hours. And I think there's another one that I had to look up, which was the NGMI, not going to make it, to LGTM, looks good to me. And so I think, I was interested enough when I saw it that I wanted to get a picture of it. So I think there's a moment sort of in software culture, and we're here talking about delivering faster, right? Everything that you do is about delivering faster, but you're keying in on this kind of cultural moment of the way that you're successful is working endless hours and, basically strapping yourself to your desk and never leaving sort of thing. So what is it about that moment? I can guess, but what's the message you're trying to send? Why do you think that's like the moment right now? And what do you think we should be doing?
Sure. One hand, it's fun to poke fun. It's I'm here to tease and make a joke with these billboards. So, and I can't take full credit. We have a hilarious marketing brand team. I think my co-founder Meryl came up with that specific one, and it's been such a fun hit. But it's also really interesting, right? We are living through a revolution in AI dev tools. I can be sipping a cup of coffee. There can be a sports game in the background, and you can have Claude Code or Cursor be chewing through code changes in a way where, like, wow, you're actually really feeling the automation. You're feeling this start happening around you. And at the same time, you're hearing so much talk around 996, intense grind set, long work hours. I think this started coming into the zeitgeist, of course, with China, and then Elon Musk was really championing this and tweeting photos of sleeping bags in the office. And now I talk to a lot of founders working on bleeding edge AI companies. And one of the things I hear from them is that speed is the moat. You talk to these teams and you're trying to figure out, like, okay, this is amazing. You have this incredible growth, but what's going to stop anyone else, any of the bigger companies, any other startups from just kind of doing exactly what you're doing? Everyone has pretty good models now. What is your advantage? And one argument I hear from a lot of teams is, well, we'll move fast. We will work incredibly hard. We'll stay ahead of the game. And I think about companies I really respect. I think Cursor and some other ones are like this, where, yeah, you can try to copy them, but they're going to just work incredibly hard, incredibly fast. And so it's weird living in this dual reality where more of our job is being assisted than ever before. But at the same time, I'm watching a culture where engineers are grinding and pushing themselves to the extreme. And then, of course, you can make fun of it, but there's like this management trope of just asking and telling and begging people to work really, really hard. My personal feelings as an engineer, I've been engineering for many years now. My personal feelings as an engineer is that it's not great to tell people how to go and do their jobs. I think that you can work together with teams. You can assemble really smart people on fun problems, and you can remove the ambiguity, and you can work together to figure out what are we building and why are we building it. But it is up to smart engineers and teammates to decide how they want to work. And if some people want to go and grind super hard and put a sleeping bag in the office, that's fantastic. If some people want to go hit the gym in the middle of the day and get a good night's sleep, that's also fine. I think that Silicon Valley has always been really wonderful as a bastion of a diversity in working styles. You compare it, we're talking about like New York, you compare New York and there's banking and stuff, like, no, there's no diversity of working culture. Like, you're in when the sun is rising, the market turns on, you're sitting at the desk, someone is shouting at you, and then you go home super late at night. Not a lot of flexibility. I think it's been beautiful that in tech, there's been a little bit more of a freedom of culture of like how people want to work, and more of a fixation on the outcomes and are we creating great things? That's personally how I like to experience and lead engineering culture. I want to be very outcome focused. I want to take on incredibly hard and demanding challenges, but I want people to have freedom about how they go about doing their work. I don't think people mind hard work. I think they mind not having the agency and deciding how they go about that. And to me, there's some aspect of 996 that undermines that a little bit. It's subtle.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think that, I mean, I have worked very long hours in my life generally because I was, as you said, very excited about the problem that I was working on, super connected with the goal, working with great people, all of those things. It didn't feel like work, right? It was like, that was kind of my friend group for a while when I was younger, was the people that I spent every day with. We worked in a house, tiny little startup sort of situation, and it was a ton of fun. But we made that call, right? Like we enjoyed it enough. We were having enough fun together that's what we were doing. I think what's really interesting in this moment when you talk about speed as a moat is the kinds of speeds we're talking about, certainly at least that we hear about, are sort of order of magnitude, not an extra 2 hours in the day sort of thing, right? Like you can't hours yourself to an order of magnitude increase in velocity, right? But you can tool yourself there. And in your description is really funny. You're like, I could be watching a sports game and be developing faster than I was ever developing before. Like, that doesn't really feel like grinding in my definition of grinding, right? Like, if I'm like, maybe I can hit the gym and build the thing at the same time, depending on the tools that I have and whether I can make them successful, right? So I do think, speed is always won in the marketplace. I think it's why we do what we do. We absolutely believe in velocity for folks. And I think we're on the cusp of capabilities, right? We're having mixed results for sure. But we can see the potential. And so we're driving towards that and trying to get to a place where we'll see such an increase for the same amount of work, right? And then the other thing is like so there's the tooling question, and then there's the decision question, like you raised, knowing what we're trying to build and why we're trying to build it. A huge amount of the waste in the majority of organizations, I would posit, is all of the time spent on the wrong thing. It's not the fact that we didn't put in an extra 2 hours at the end of the day. It's that we were building in completely the wrong direction for 3 months, right? Like, we're never getting that back. And so I do think, I think speed actually wins. I think it can be misinterpreted, right? And I've worked extremely long hours, but I've also, on not the rarest of occasions, gone to bed and woken up and realized everything I was doing was incorrect. And if I did this one thing, now that I have like fresh thinking and some sleep, and I'm not just powering on yet another cup of coffee, I could just go do this one thing and solve all of my problems. And so it's an interesting time. I think the agency is really critical. But let's build on top of that. So like the SDLC as a whole, right, software delivery lifecycle, is changing in fundamental ways. Like, what do you think is most significant that's happened in the last, I don't know, pick some number of months, because every day something changes. And then, where do you think we are on that curve? We'll talk a little in a second about where we think it all goes.
Well, one aspect, there's a ton of things that are changing in engineering. That's what makes it really fun to be in the field and working right now, because it's all changing at a rate that I haven't witnessed it before. One aspect I obsess over is the code review side of things. The staring at a pull request, thinking about testing it, reading the code, making sure it feels good, working with a partner, and eventually merging that code in. That's one slice of the outer loop of software development. There's a lot of slices. There's the writing the code, there's reviewing, there's the integrating and deploying it. But think about the review side of it. It's a very interesting moment in history. We're watching a huge proliferation of code changes, way more code changes per author than before. I hear, you can see it in the data, but you can also hear it in the anecdotes. You talk to like senior engineers and some people on teams that are waking up and a new grad on their team has submitted them 20 Claude Code PRs overnight, enthusiastically, love that energy. But now the senior engineer is waking up like, oh crap, okay, I have like 20 PRs, half these are kind of bad. I got to review these. This is kind of a mountain of work. It might actually take me all day to get through these. It's kind of an interesting problem statement. You also start seeing really large PRs too. So maybe engineers are breaking them up, but maybe they're really bloating these pull requests. And there's emergent problems happening here. There's a trust problem. Before, I used to trust that my teammate was a pretty good engineer and they wrote this code change and they think it's pretty good by the time they're submitting it to me. I'm going to give a second pair of eyes and I'm going to scan it for bugs, make sure it's architecturally aligned with the code base, make sure I don't know something that they don't know. We can talk about that. Also for context, it's great for me to understand what they're up to. That all makes sense in a world where you, Rob, I trust you and you're submitting me a great pull request. Now, there's a couple of cases. Maybe you hand typed it. Maybe you sort of typed it, but then Cursor helped you autocomplete it. Maybe you tabbed yes a bunch in Claude Code. Or maybe a background agent just took a request somewhere and just created this code change, and there really is no human at the helm. There's a whole spectrum of ways this could be created. And my trust is very variable because these systems are awesome. They're great, but I don't trust them as much as I might trust you, Rob, that these have been really thoughtful, that they're well tested, that you are taking responsibility for those code changes. So I have this trust problem at the element too. And I also now have a context problem because now it's doubly important that I am absorbing the context of this code change. Before, again, you wrote it, so you have like 100% context. I'll read it. I now have 25%. If an AI wrote it, I better hope to at least get 25% context, if not more context on that, because it's really important that between us, someone knows what's running in production. When we merge that code out to the system, we're still on the hook for checking the logs and incident response and DevOps and remediation. And I do worry about a world where teams, unknowingly have a little bit less and less context for the code that's running in production. And hey, maybe you're a simple website, maybe it doesn't really matter. But maybe you're a high stakes application. Maybe you're part of a hospital system or a self-driving car. And maybe it really, really matters that people have deep ownership and understanding of what's running in production. So I obsess about the code review side of the system. I think it's bottlenecking more. I think the importance is increasing. And we're seeing tons of innovation happening on the code gen side. I'm very interested in what other innovations we can apply on the outer loop to keep it safe, keep it fast, keep it high context, lest this just become a little bit of a car crash down the line.
Yeah, well, I see that you use the self-driving car as an example, so that metaphor makes sense. Yeah, I think we're going to see that, right? Like I don't even know that typing was the bottleneck at any point, but we've certainly unleashed velocity in this tiny little part of the system. And everything else is bearing the brunt, right? Like, we opened up one dam and the next dam down the stream is just getting absolutely hammered with, probably if it's a stream, we'll call it a river in this case. And so I think there's a lot to be done there. And you sort of, refer to that as the outer loop. One of the things I've been thinking about is the notion that a lot of this stuff collapses into the inner loop. Like we won't be successful at the generation until what we're generating is of the quality that you would look at it and go, yeah, this looks right. Let's move it. And sort of like even the pieces of the puzzle probably start to break, right? Like the sort of linear notion that we have of, moving this thing through the factory is going to completely collapse, I think, under that pressure, right? Not that I can say what it looks like. So I do think, as I said, we're in kind of early stages of this, right? We've seen some potential. We haven't realized all of it, right? We've kind of unleashed part and then other things are breaking. So is there, if you look out, let's call it 12 months, often people ask these questions in 5 years and I'm like, 5 years? Yeah, no idea. But 12 months from now, like where do you think people will have invested? Is there a change you see in sort of how we function that's going to allow us to really take advantage of these early glimmers of velocity?
100%. 100%. I think there are a lot of techniques. There's a lot of old techniques that can become more popular, and there's new techniques that can be very helpful here. On the old techniques side of the house, there are companies who have been dealing with really high volumes of code changes for a long time. This is the Googles and the Facebooks of the world. And there's famous old blog posts about how they process like millions of commits a day. And they're fascinating. It's like really interesting to learn about their systems. They use really thoughtful patterns of like dynamic CI and testing. So they're testing the minimum change set per code change. They're really thoughtful about their merge queues so they can process all of these code changes without their trunk breaking. And they also have really nice human ergonomic systems, inboxes to find the code changes that matter to you, so that someone doesn't just have to ping you a GitHub link all the time. There's lots of these techniques. They use patterns of stacking so that their code changes can be very small, but can keep stacking on on top of one another and not blocking for code review, thereby slowing down the code gen. So they have a lot of these techniques. They've existed for a decade plus. I think most all of these are now as or more relevant because of the influx of AI code gen. Now I really want a great way to see an inbox and find all my code changes. I care about stacking because, man, a human didn't want to get blocked or bloat their code changes, but an AI cares about that even more. It's fantastic to break those up into small, parallelizable, reviewable, testable code changes. And now merge queues are becoming more popular than ever before, because maybe, with 20 engineers, you could just merge into trunk and it was fine and it didn't break that often. But if everyone's creating 5 times the number of code changes, you're essentially simulating a lot more potential merge conflicts and merge skews. So you need these new technologies. Now, luckily, whether in open source or paid tooling, you can find this stuff, you can adopt it. Luckily, there's a lot of tried and tested wisdom here. So I think that's quite safe. Then on the flip side, there's emergent things. Just as there's emergent things, people using AI to help create code, there's really cool new stuff happening to help you process it. One that I love is AI code review. And I think that there's a very fun marketing term that's called AI code review, but there's also a much more engineering minded viewpoint of this, which is like a super linter. And I think people hear AI code review, they're like, oh, awesome. That part of the job that I don't really like doing, like don't have to do that anymore. Wrong. Instead, what is emerging is you have unit tests. That's great. You got linters. You got some integration tests. Now there's like another pillar. It's these LLMs that are scanning your code changes, and they're kind of fuzzy and they're very non-brittle. They're very fluid, and they can review it and they can think about the code change and find some stylistic errors, some security concerns. They can find functional problems. They can look over past comments and pull requests in other parts of the code base and give you some feedback. That's really great. But at the end of the day, it's a system that is leaving me a couple of inline comments and helping me create a better code change, but they're not catching everything, just like my unit tests don't catch everything, and they're not solving the whole part of the problem. But I'm very excited about these because I think at a low enough cost and a fast enough execution speed, everyone in the world should be running these on like all of their pull requests. I think it's just really net value positive, especially if they have a low false positive rate. And I'm watching these become more and more popular in the ecosystem. Still a little bit expensive. I think they still cost about, depends, how much juice you're putting into it, but like 50 cents in execution. That's, you work on CI. That's like in the ballpark where we can make that work. But I'm very excited as models get cheaper and smarter, just really running these on every single code change in order to provide first rounds of feedback and helping ensure a high quality here.
Yeah, I mean, 50, it's so funny you come up with a number, right? Like 50 cents as someone who, pays engineers. Right. Earlier, you talked about the senior staff, whoever they are, engineer getting up in the morning and going, well, I'm going to spend my day reviewing these enormous PRs. Right. And I can shortcut that for 50 cents. Like 50 cents is not even a discussion. Right. We have the challenge that 50 cents is being heavily underwritten right now. Like, I don't know that that's actually, like, we always assume these things will get cheaper. I don't know if the next step will be cheaper. Right. Or if there's going to have to be some sort of like, reconciliation of the cost in order to fund everything that we're funding right now. I mean, just read the numbers around the data centers we're building and all this stuff to support these tools. But I think, when you really actually work out the economics, at least at current pricing, it doesn't actually sound expensive when you're talking about putting your best people back to the work they were doing instead of the work of dealing with what's been generated by maybe not your best people sometimes. Right. So there's a lot of math there. Hopefully people have spreadsheets for their own organizations. But, you identified a lot of tools in there. And that was kind of the way I framed the question, SDLC. But, part of what you do is building these kinds of tools for folks. Part of what you do is execute really quickly yourselves, right, at Graphite on delivery. It's something you've talked about a little bit publicly. So what are the other ingredients that go into that? Like, sure, I think you can give anyone a set of great tools, and depending on the culture, the direction, whatever it might be, you're still going to get different outcomes, right? So what else is critical about the way that you work at Graphite to really see the velocity, the throughput, however you talk about it, that you see?
That's a great question. Yeah, how do you think about and organize an engineering team to really prioritize velocity. There's lots of different ways. We can talk about the tools. We can talk about the culture. We talk about the organization itself. I think these all add up. We think about the culture side of it a lot. I remember very early on, as we started understanding the value of what we were creating with Graphite, and we thought a lot. There's lots of things we could choose the value to be. It could be just the pleasure of using a really high quality tool. It could be the quality of the code changes that you're helping create. But at the end of the day, what I realized is that a lot of companies and a lot of the executives, when they were signing large contracts, they were buying velocity from us. And they were buying Graphite because they believed that to some measurable degree, it would speed up their engineering teams. And what I realized is, oh my gosh, okay, so if we're selling velocity to the best engineering teams in the industry, and I'm so like thrilled because like our logos and the teams who use Graphite are the coolest companies. It's like ice to Eskimos. I'm like, if they're buying us, like I'm so proud. But we also better be one of the fastest, highest productivity teams in the industry. Otherwise, what claim do we have to be selling productivity and be selling velocity to the other teams? We better be walking the walk. So I think about that a lot. So culturally, we really prioritize that. And specifically within the engineering team, I constantly beat this drum that we want to be extremely urgent, extremely expert, and extremely kind. I think about these three pillars because, okay, step one, I just talked about it. Velocity, it's great. It's great to be a fast-moving startup. It's great to sell it. It's great to walk it. But what do we need to protect against the failure modes that could come with that? I need really deep expertise. As you just gave me some fun examples of times where you're working extremely hard, but you would accidentally work in the wrong direction and then throw away 3 months of work. That matters. Also, you can move really fast, but you think about someone who's incredibly fast, incredibly kind, but not expert. It's like a bunch of new grads who are just hustling and throwing spaghetti at the wall. That's not helpful to the amazing highest end engineering teams. They want tooling from something better. So you need the expertise to be helping craft these workflows for other experts. You're a tool builder. And thirdly, you need the kindness, because if you're really expert and really fast, but you have no kindness, now you're just a team of assholes stumbling around a room, being rude to one another. We can think of companies that kind of operate in that fashion. That's my own personal hell. I want to work on a team that has the expertise, the velocity, and then I also like working with, because I'm going to be working with this team for a long time. So we drill that deeply into the culture. So on one hand, it's that identity situation. It's a culture situation. It's people buying in and opting to that style of company. I also think about the organizational side of things, which is how do you arrange teams to be really fluid and fast moving? One simple thing we do is we choose to be a full in-person company. And that's not that hot of a take in 2025, but we were founded in 2020 and we lived through the pandemic. And of course, we always respected the COVID restrictions, but we always said, we're like, hey, this is going to be a full in-person company. We had a lot of temptations to hire remote and hire hybrid. And we stayed away from that. And as soon as we were able to safely, we brought everyone in office in New York. And look, there's different ways to run a company. You can choose to run a remote and hybrid. That works totally. But I love working at a full in-person company because I have very high fidelity of communication. I have very good trust and relationships and friendships with the people I work with. And that allows us to get in a room really quickly. And if we have a problem, if there's a blocker, if we're waiting on designs, whatever it may be, I can walk 3 feet, I can talk to the person, I can leverage trust and kindness and relationship, and we can keep moving, we can unblock that thing and keep shipping throughout the night. So I think that we arrange the company like this. I talk to a lot of AI startups who are forced to move even faster than us or even more flexibly than us. Because, at Graphite, I'm able to plot a product roadmap 6 to 12 months in the future. I talked to some of the bleeding edge AI startups, and they're like, we are at our best thinking like a month in the future right now. And I think the more you are on the bleeding edge with that kind of stuff, the more you need to keep these teams really fluid. To what degree are they teams or pods? To what degree are you setting a quarterly roadmap, or are you every week just rearranging around the priorities of the business? There's pros and cons. I think the more you can create stability amongst teams, the more you can create quality, but it might not allow you to move the fastest or react the fastest to changes in the industry. Likewise, I can keep these teams really fluid, call them pods, reshuffle them every week. We can be really fluid and really reactive, which is a form of speed, in my opinion, but I might not get the quality and the depth of engineering that I need in order to ship, say, a merged queue to a 5,000 person company and just go really deep on that for 6 months. So I think about the balance of how we organize our engineering teams to facilitate the kind of velocity we want to drive, and balancing that with quality, because I want to be a fast-moving engineering team. It is a priority of mine, but I do also have a backstop of quality. And I don't want to move so fast that we're compromising quality. And we need to strike a careful balance there.
So I agree with so much of that. I'm just going to pick one point so that I can dive into it, because it was really interesting to me. And you highlighted selling velocity to the highest
Mhm.
performance teams,
Mhm.
and what a treat that is, and what that reminds me of. There's a lot of discussion. I've said these words myself, that AI tooling, for example, is an amplifier.
Mhm.
I've said this many different ways, even prior to AI. Like, great tools are not going to change your engineering culture. They're not going to change your focus on velocity, right? But if you are really good and you have great tools, then even better tooling is going to allow you to unlock more, right? So, I mean, I'm not in your business, but I'm in an adjacent business for sure.
Mhm.
And I think it makes a lot of sense that the teams that are pushing the boundaries, right, are the ones that are saying, hey, we need something even better because we've done everything we can with the tools that are available, as opposed to like, we can pile on all the fancy tools, but we don't even know what we're trying to build. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like, nobody even shows up for work. Like, you're not going to get faster because when people are just not even motivated to do the job, right? You need to be, in my mind, pushing the envelope to realize the value of an even better way, right? Like,
Mhm.
if waterfall would help you, right, then you probably don't need stack PRs.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't feel like you're at the point where that's
Mhm.
really gonna move the needle for you. So it's an interesting takeaway. I hadn't thought about it that way before, but when you say it, it adds up to me. Anyway,
It's one reason I
um,
like working at a venture-backed startup. I'm forced to just perform at the best ability because there's no alternative, and I like being in that pressure.
that's awesome. I second that. I often, oh, you're in New York. You know where Flushing Meadows is? There's
Mhm.
like the U.S. Open, where that's in the main stadium. I guess Arthur Ashe is
Mhm.
the main court. There's a sign as the players are walking out that says "Pressure is a privilege." Like,
Mhm.
the opportunity to perform at that level is like,
Mhm.
yes, there's a lot of pressure associated with it, but you've earned the right to do it. And now's your
Mhm.
moment to shine. Like, I love that sign. I use a picture of it all the time. And so, yeah, like, what a privilege, what an opportunity, right, to be in that world and have the the pressure, but the pressure in a positive way. That's just like, we have the resources because we're VC backed. We have the
Mhm.
ability to put a great team around ourselves. So I'm just kind of projecting it, like, we're at CircleCI obviously much later in that journey, but like, the the opportunity to create that environment and get to work in that environment. And people always ask me, why I'm still here. I'm 11 years into CircleCI. And it's like, the people around me, the work that we do, like, I'm
Mhm.
excited every day. Maybe not at 6 a.m. I like to like have coffee and some breakfast before I get after it. But like,
Yeah.
I'm excited to get up every day and work on the problems that we work on. And in particular, selling, I don't know if this is true for you, but solving the problems of developers, right? And
Mhm.
like, solving my own problem on a daily basis
So
is a
good.
super exciting thing. So, speaking of engineers, I'm going to transition into our segment that we like. We like to do these little standard things for a period, and I love asking this question of folks. How did you first know that you were an engineer? When was the moment where you were like, "Yeah, this is how I'm made up"?
I love engineering. This has been a straightforward through line through my life. My father was a mechanical engineer, and I
Mm-hmm.
grew up surrounded by him working on the house, him working on cars. He loves physical engineering, and he would always bring me into the garage and try and get me excited and invested in the cars. Uh, I have an older sister who fell in love with mechanical engineering through the same path. She would sit in the engine bay of the car, working with my dad on it, getting covered in grease. And I was a little bit of a black sheep because I would indulge them, but I always wanted to kind of like run back to the family computer and play
Mm.
games and make 3D graphic simulations. And I was, for a while, I would try to sketch out models of trains and watches, but I couldn't really build them because I didn't really have, even though my dad had a great garage, I didn't have welding machines and giant pieces of steel. I got into AutoCAD and I got to fiddle with that a little bit and I would explore that. But then it came together in high school because I was living in Nevada and I turned 15 and my parents were like, great, you're 15. Uh, you want to start learning how to drive? You're going to have to get gas money. You better get a job. And I went all around town handing out my 15-year-old resume to the Starbucks and the Red Robin and trying to get a job. And no one would take me. So I decided to try and make iPhone apps instead to make money. And I took the family Intel tower and I installed a a pirated version of VMware and then a pirated version of Mac OS and then an Xcode and then an iOS simulator in there. I'm like 9 levels deep of simulation. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading Coding for Dummies and watching iTunes U Stanford classes and trying to figure out how to code an iPhone app. but I really fell in love with it. And it really felt like for the first time ever, I could have all these big ideas and build cool things, but also not be limited by the resources around me. And it didn't matter. They didn't have steel and welding machines. I had a computer and a keyboard, and that was enough that I could create just about anything. And then I launched it, and then I started making iPhone apps, and they actually did okay, and I hustled around them and stuff. And there was incredible satisfaction I got from building something and then seeing people in the world being able to play with it, interact with it, and use it. And that created this really addictive, obsessive feedback loop that I just became voracious and just never looked back in the world.
I love it. What a fun story. I like the kind of like physical to software mix. I mean, I didn't study computer science. I studied a more, engineering physics, which is not particularly like in the physical world. It's like all quantum and stuff you can't see or touch. But like, and then transition into software later. But that kind of like, I see them as like, if you go out one step, as being very similar, right? Totally different tools. One's very hands-on. I get, covered in grease, as you were describing, in the garage, versus very cleanly sitting at my computer. Maybe like the food that I spill on my keyboard is like the big risk, right? Don't eat it. Don't eat at your keyboard, children. Like it's my kids' keyboards are always jammed up with garbage. Anyway, I digress. So I think that like they're very similar. The one thing that I think about software is like, it's the double-edged sword of software is there's so few constraints, right? You can build anything as you just described, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. Like in so many physical engineering practices, you're talking about the cost of the steel, right? Can we afford this particular engine for this car or whatever? Like pick your example, your metaphor, right? It needs to be strong enough to do this. Therefore, what is the minimum amount that we can spend that meets the conditions versus I have a blank screen. I can ask Cursor to do whatever I want it to do kind of thing. And I think that's when we talked earlier about spending 3 months on the wrong thing, right? Like we don't necessarily feel the constraints. And I think that's something that we have to bring back into software engineering in some way. But anyway, I love that story. Awesome evolution. And my real question was going to be, did you get enough gas money? But it sounds like you did. You sort of answered that along the way. I'm sure it took a few weeks. Like for a while, you're like, when do I get to drive? Because so far I've made 99 cents, but I had to spend $99 to get my developer account. So I'm not going. That's interesting.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I've been there. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. This has been amazing. I love what y'all are doing. Obviously, I love moving fast, and I think just looking at that and tearing it apart, it's a very exciting time as everything transitions, and we're going to learn more and more every week, every month. Thanks to everyone who's listening. If there's someone you want us to talk to, find me on LinkedIn. And if you enjoy the podcast, obviously subscribe on your podcast provider of choice. Greg, thanks again for joining me. It's been amazing to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Rob. It's amazing.